Everyone thinks the hardest part is quitting. That's just not true. But you don't realize what the hardest part is until after you're clean and separated from the situation. For me, I always thought that there was an end date, that one day this would all be over. I'd feel relief. I'd go to detox and get clean and it would just all be over. And that's not what it's like at all. And one of the biggest, worst parts of using is happening while you're using. And I know most people don't think that way, and a lot of people think that quitting is the hardest part, but while you're using, you hate yourself. Honestly, most people I know who use drugs hate themselves. You're constantly worried about how you're not where your peers are at, you're not where you should be at. You feel like shit for missing important events, skipping out on friends' weddings. Just things are tough while you're using. Quitting is hard, but that 5 days in detox or that year on Suboxone or whatever you may do, nothing's harder than what comes before and after quitting. Quitting is kind of like it's the threshold. You go from using into quitting and then into the after effects. During using, the worst part is the isolation. You're hiding from everybody, you don't want anyone to know. It's a very lonely experience and it's just so easy to get addicted. One day you use one time, you just try it, and then you're doing it every day, and the next thing you know, you're not leaving your room. It's very isolating, it's very lonely. Um, but you don't think about it to the full extent until after you get clean, because basically you're so fucked up that you feel like shit and you hate yourself and you know shit's not going well. But once you get clean, you kind of realize like, damn, I wasted 5 years of my life on that, or 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I know people that use from age 15 to 75, and it's awful. It's awful what it does to you. It's awful how it makes you feel. And looking back, it's like I can't believe I wasted so much time not getting help, wasted my life just doing nothing, just doing drugs. I should have a degree and a career by now, but I'm looking for fucking pharmacy jobs and I have a GED. And it just kind of sucks how far you fall behind. And you do realize it, but it doesn't feel that impactful until after you're clean and you're playing catch up with your life. What I expected when I quit drugs was clarity, relief, finally to make it out this hole and feel better forever. And it's really not that easy. Like I said, after you get clean, you start thinking about how fucked up you were when you weren't clean and how bad it was. And just basically, all your shortcomings, all your fuck ups, all you can do is think about that. And not going back to drugs can be very hard, yes. For me, the Suboxone cured all of that. I barely felt any cravings. After a month or two, there was no cravings at all. And it's safe, it's regulated by a doctor. You know that it's not going to be laced. Don't be buying shit off the streets, but working with a doctor in the Suboxone program is extremely beneficial. But the effects of getting clean and looking back on your life, that's the hardest part, probably. Not quitting, not the detox. The second hardest part is after you get clean, having to rebuild your life. You know, you you have no skills, you have no experience. Depending on what age you started using drugs, you probably aren't that far in life. You probably don't have that much experience. When I was doing drugs, I was quitting every job within 24 hours. Couldn't keep a job, and if you do keep a job, you have to leave in the middle of the day because you're dope sick, and you have to get well or you can't keep working. I can't even tell you how many times I left work earlier, how many times I was 4 hours late because I had to find something. And just coming back from that and trying to rebuild your resume and convince people to give you a second chance and that you're not a complete fuck up and that you can do what they're asking of you. And it's just kind of really hard to change people's perspectives. Obviously, not your employer isn't going to know that you were a drug addict, but they will see your lack of resume, they will see your lack of education, your lack of connections. It's really shitty. It's hard to try to rebuild your life. I should have a family by now, and I'm still, looking for a solid place to stay. And it's just the hard part is after, the hardest part is before. Getting clean is not easy. There's also a lot of stuff after getting clean that people don't talk about. The drugs numb your brain and make you feel kind of stupid, kind of dull. They make it so you're not freaking out about everything, but it's not a good trade off. So, something they don't talk about is after you get clean, quietness can feel almost uncomfortable. You almost need the chaos going on in your life. It's really hard to come out of a trap house or come from smoking dope under bridges to living a normal life in a normal house in a normal bed. And it just feels, when there's not chaos, it feels unnerving. It doesn't feel right. Kind of feels like there's something missing, which is fucked up. That's just what the drugs do to your brain. But it's a feeling you can't shake for a long time. It took me a long time to get over that. Sometimes I still feel, antsy when there's not enough going on or a little anxious, but it's not worth the chaos is not worth it. It's not worth your health. It's not worth your life. It's not worth your relationships. And you kind of you're bored, and your emotions are going crazy because you're so doled out while you're on drugs that you don't feel emotions. I didn't feel real emotions for years. And then once you get off the drugs, you kind of everything comes rushing back, anxiety, sadness, depression, but also happiness, excitement, joy. It's feeling the negative emotions is way worth feeling the positive emotions. You know, being doled out, junked out, whatever the fuck you want to call it. If your brain is not working right, life just isn't as good. You need, for quality of life, uh, you need emotions. You need emotions for life. You have to feel things. It's not healthy to not feel things. And I didn't feel anything for a really long time. And once I got clean, it's a major fucking difference. No one really talks about that either. What surprised me the most is after coming back, after doing all that shit, after getting your emotions back, you start to become yourself again. But it's that same thing I talked about earlier, how you feel like you're behind. You have to rebuild your life, or regain your family's trust, or however, whatever position you're in. When you come off of drugs, you're rebuilding that. Quitting was one thing, but being alive, being a person, having a valuable life, that's a way different thing that no one really talks about. And the progress kind of feels, it feels slow for a long time. It feels like you're not getting anywhere. And it's just depressing because you already spent however many years not getting anywhere. And now you finally did the thing. You did the big thing. Everyone says get clean, do your best, get healthy. And that's fucking awesome if you do. That's awesome if you do. But it is hard. It's hard to come back from that. But it is possible. Don't take this as me saying it's impossible. You should reach out and get help. You should get clean. But I know it's not that easy. And I know that there's a lot that comes with that. And I just want to prepare you guys for what it's like to get clean. Because I really hope that everyone watching this who has an addiction problem sees this and wants to get help and wants to get better. I'm not trying to preach to you guys. I'm just giving you my honest thoughts. Um, just a lot of this shit doesn't get talked about. And I needed to share it with you guys. Maybe this will help someone. Maybe this will help someone not fuck their life up. Maybe this will help someone come back from fucking their life up. Maybe this will keep someone alive. Maybe someone can show this to their aunt or their cousin or their brother. I want to help as many people as possible. And it's really important to talk about these things and tell you what life is really like. I know most of you don't see stuff like this every day. Um, it's shocking. It's jarring. It's not always fun to listen to. It's pretty fucked up. Drug addiction it's gross. You're not gross because you do drugs, but the act of doing drugs and getting drugs and staying high to me is just so fucking gross, and I don't want to go back to that. And relapse is almost certain death these days, with the shit they're putting out. I've heard of people taking one hit and dying right there, and it's so sad. It's so fucked up. So if this can help anyone with the outline of what it's like to get clean, if it can help one person, I'll be happy. So hopefully that wasn't too much. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you. Thank you for leaving a like. Thank you for subscribing. 75 subs. We're almost at 100, guys. Let's do it. We got this. Subscribe for more stories, more treatment stories, more recovery stories, and there's some other stuff I want to show you guys like I talked about before. So just keep an eye out on the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for liking. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace.